My name is Carlos Davila Sanchez. The sport or physical activity that I participate in is CrossFit. I'm also a fitness instructor. I do HITT training, I do CrossFit training as well, and I also teach within the sports psychology realm. I first started doing CrossFit about 8 years ago. The culture of CrossFit I think is unique for me personally because it's a genuine culture. There are certain rules that go with the culture. There are certain ways of communicating. There are certain ways of interacting with other people. And there's a genuine camaraderie there from athlete to athlete. My hopes for sport are a genuine level of increased inclusion. Not just at the race level, but also at the gender level. I feel like there needs to be a greater emphasis on why we only have a very specific group of people within positions of power within sport. Like there's absolutely no reason for it. And I think you still have a lot of these negative assumptions about female athletes and their ability to control their emotions. I've read a lot of research that focuses on the reasons why you don't have as many female coaches is because they're not emotionally stable enough. And then I'm looking at highlights of male coaches throwing chairs across rooms and being super emotional. So for me, my hope is that there's more inclusion in general. And I will say within CrossFit, it's one of the few places where I've never really felt like someone was being negatively responded to. And I don't know how they accomplish this within CrossFit specifically, but just making it feel like it's a place where regardless of where you come from, you know, what your background is, what your gender is, what your sexual orientation is, like this is a place that feels comfortable. And I think even some of the language that gets used, we make sure that it's not going to be something that's going to offend any particular individual. But I feel like there could always be more because we're constantly in situations where people are uncomfortable, and figuring out how to get people to be more comfortable in sports and understand that sports should be all inclusive. It doesn't matter, you know, where you're from, what your history is, what your family history is, like you should be able to participate in a sport. I think the Me Too movement is huge when you look at it in sport, especially when you're talking about the sport of fitness. If we're talking about CrossFit or we're talking about HITT training, because those are all contexts where there's a possibility of sexualizing females within those contexts. Any HITT class, a lot of boot camps, CrossFit classes that I'm teaching, people are not wearing a lot of clothes. People are sweating, people are showing off their bodies because, you know, they're proud of their bodies and they work hard for them. But if you're looking at it from kind of that Me Too perspective and the impact that that has, the conversations that get had and the comments that get made, you have to be really mindful of how other people are going to perceive them. Making sure that, you know, inappropriate jokes are not being said, making sure that there's just an aesthetic of equality within that setting and people don't feel like they're being ostracized or they're being made to feel uncomfortable in that setting. I don't know what someone is going through when they come into one of my classes, right? And you may not be thinking that you're saying something inappropriate. I'm one of the most sarcastic people I've ever met in my life. So I'll say things and I'm saying them sarcastically. And I've had moments where I've literally caught myself saying something sarcastically and I'm like, okay, someone might take that the wrong way. And I know what my intention is, but once those words come out, my intention no longer matters. You have to be a lot more mindful of how that communication is going to be perceived. I actually, taking it to my professional life, I had a very interesting conversation. I'm gonna use conversation because I don't want to call it an argument between two of my students. And a lot of what was being said by one of my male students, like I could see why the female students were offended by it. And he had no clue. There was no moment where he was like, okay, like this is inappropriate, this is sexist. It was just, this is how I think, this is how I interact. And I wasn't sure how to deal with it at the time and how to mitigate it. And I allowed the female students to communicate why they felt like his language and the way he was communicating was inappropriate. And I had one student actually email me and thank me for just allowing that process to happen. I really hope this Me Too movement doesn't lead to retaliation. Because a lot of times when we have these situations where we're focusing on the powerful, but then there's the repercussions. I just hope that the men that are raising daughters, the men that, you know, have women in their lives, that they're seeing this and understanding that certain things have to change.